All right, welcome everybody. We're so glad you could join us today for this discussion on establishing a culture of certification in your IT program. So once again, thank you for joining us, and most importantly, thank you for all you do to make a difference in the lives of your students. So I'm Justin Moss. I'm part of the marketing team here at TestOut, and joining with me is Maria Farley. Maria, you can go ahead and turn on your camera. Many of you have worked with Maria in the past. She's a wonderful member of our customer success team, and we're so excited to have her with us today as well. So I'm going to go ahead and have Maria introduce our guests who have been kind enough to offer us their time and their expertise.
Thanks, Justin. It's really a privilege to work with the instructors and professors because we know that you are the ones that have the direct influence on helping students become successful. So I really enjoy what I do here at TestOut, and I'm excited to introduce our two guests. Our first guest is Oliver Miller, who teaches at Genesee Community College in New York. Oliver has more than 20 years experience in the IT industry, and some of his experience includes product development, information technology, internal audit, compliance, IT risk management, and IT governance. He's responsible for leading technology-oriented business risk control reviews and managing internal audit outsourcing projects for clients. And he also assists his clients in adopting the COBIT framework and meeting internal control certification requirements. He has led technology-enabled business process reviews, controls reviews, and risk identification and mitigation engagements in a wide range of entities, including aerospace and the defense industry, healthcare organizations in the public sector, and companies in the consumer business industry. Other than client services delivery, Oliver is pursuing his PhD in computing and information science at Rochester Institute of Technology and preparing to take the CISSP exam. He also currently holds a security level clearance with the Department of Defense. 4 years ago, Oliver made the switch to teaching and says that of all the jobs he's had, teaching suits him the most. In his spare time, he enjoys working his gentleman's farm. Since teaching gives him 3 months off in the summer, Oliver says it works out just great. Oliver, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome, Marie.
Our next guest is Bob Bunge, who teaches at North Seattle College in Washington State. Bob has been teaching information technology in higher education for over 15 years, and his other interests include IT security, software development, business startup, and school-to-career connections for IT students. Academic credentials include an MS in computer and software systems from the University of Washington in Tacoma, and an MBA at Keller Graduate School of Management. And he's a technology coordinator for 5 school districts. Bob's goals for the IT courses he teaches is for all students enrolled to gain valuable employment skills. His message to students is, I will do whatever I can to help you succeed in the course. Your job is to put in the effort and to ask for help when you need it. If you do that, success will be yours. When not behind a keyboard, Bob likes to get outside for hiking and biking. Bob, thank you as well for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, yes, thank you, Bob and Oliver, for joining us. So Oliver has some bandwidth issues, and so he's not going to be able to join us via webcam, but you can see his picture on the screen, hopefully. And we are so grateful for both of you for joining us. In addition to our guest instructors, we'll also have the privilege to hear from Cody Clark, managing editor of Certification Magazine, and Dana Fellows, who taught IT for many years before joining the development team here at TestOut. So by way of housekeeping, just before we get started, you'll see there's a questions panel on the sidebar. We'll be monitoring this, and we'll either answer the question in the panel, or if it's something that we want everybody to talk about, we'll maybe save that for a Q&A at the end. If it's something that we can't reply here in the webinar, we definitely want to make sure we get you an answer, so we'll reach out to you individually to answer those questions. We will be sending out the recording after this webinar. Any slides that we share as well, we'll make sure that we share those with you, so you don't have to worry about that. And then we wanted to have some fun today, and so we will be giving away 3 Raspberry Pi mini computers throughout the webinar. First one, so this is how you can win one. everybody who sticks with us to the end, you'll be you can get one of the Raspberry Pis. We'll do that drawing at the end. Those who ask questions or engaged, we'll make sure we have a special drawing for you. And then many of you know we have our own certification, and so we'll be giving a Raspberry Pi to those of you who are on the webinar with us who have administered the most certification exams. So we'll make sure that we'll have to do that afterwards, because we'll see who got on, and then we can figure that out later. So before we get things started, I wanted to do a poll question for you. So here on the screen, you should see a poll question. All right, so you should see a question. It says, do you actively promote certifications with your students? Go ahead and take a minute and answer that poll question. All right, we've got 82% of you have voted, so thank you so much. So I'm gonna go ahead and close that poll. It looks like 90% of you actively promote certifications, so that's fantastic. Thank you for promoting those certifications for your students. All right, so I think we're ready to go ahead and get started with our discussion. Maria, if you want to take it away.
Sounds good. Wonderful to hear that there's a 90% of you that do that there. I know in a college environment, in the academic environment, you have a lot of different curriculum requirements and time frames for material that you need to cover. So it's great to hear that you're making sure that students are having the opportunity to get those certifications as part of that time they're spending in your classes. Oliver and Bob, I want to as by way of introduction, have you help us with a question I have about what your experiences are with students that you've had in your classes and certification, and how that's made a difference for them, or also what keyed you into understanding the importance of certifications. And we'll have Oliver go first, if you don't mind, and then Bob, if you'll share your insight next.
Sure. Thank you, Maria. So before I became an IT instructor, I worked for various companies and managed several different departments within those companies. In some of those departments, I got to hire tech workers, right? So, during those days, before the career builders and, the monster search engines were out there, if you were looking for a job, of course, some of the things that you would do is read through, some sort of ad in the paper, and go and try to fill out an application. And then I would get those maybe 30, 40 resumes. You try to read through them, sort them into two piles, and then before you know it, you figure out, maybe 5 or 10 candidates you'll call for actual interview. But for the most part, when you start reading through so many resumes, you get the same kind of theme, right? Everyone has the experience, sort of, right? But mostly what I've noticed is that since they were all looking the same, how do you make that distinction between candidates? And back in those days, what I've noticed was that some of the candidates, they would put something like Eagle Scout, right, on their resume. And, I'm not an Eagle Scout, but my son, for example, has gone through the process. So I know there's a level of commitment and dedication that it takes to become an Eagle Scout. So right off the bat, if I saw that Eagle Scout was on a candidate's resume, they will automatically go in the pile for a face-to-face interview. So just the fact that Eagle Scout badge / certification gave them, in my mind, immediate accreditation as to I know what type of individual that person is. So this is one of the reasons why the certification that candidates bring to the door, really positions them quite well for success within that company.
Thank you. That's a really great example. Bob, did you want to share?
Yes, certainly. So when I generally advise students, I recommend essentially a three-pronged approach. One of those is you need to complete a college degree. The other one is you need to have work experience. Then the third thing is certifications. Now, the challenge is how do you work with students, of which I have many, who are either entry level or career changers. So they don't have the IT experience yet. And so then the challenge becomes, how do you get that entry level position? So the choice is, do you want to concentrate entirely on the college degree and go out into the job market that way? Or do you want to take a couple of courses, pass a certification exam, take a couple more courses, pass another certification exam, and so forth? Now, like Oliver, I've been involved with IT-related HR on both sides of the table going back to the 90s. And I've spoken with dozens, if not hundreds, of IT HR professionals over the years, asking very simply the question, what do my students need to do to get an interview with your company? All right. And so based on all of that input, my recommendation is, if you're an entry-level IT person, you want to get some certifications on your resume early in the game. Because the problem is, although it's important to get a college degree in order to advance in your career, the reality is, looking at the college transcript is probably one of the least interesting parts of a resume from an HR standpoint. I mean, you'd love to see the work experience, but for someone that doesn't have the work experience, the next best thing is IT certifications, because the IT certifications are industry standardized, they're objectively graded. And so if you start accumulating certifications, it just tells the whole world that you actually do know what you're doing. Okay, and that's super critical for getting that entry level position.
Excellent. Thank you. Is there a
And
story of, oh, go ahead, Oliver. Excuse me.
no, I just wanted to add to exactly, yeah, what Bob was saying. You're looking at certifications, and of course, you're looking at work experience. And what I tell my students is that, I could prepare you to sit for those certification, but they always ask, well, how do I get that work experience, right? And the answer that I give to them is very, very easy. You volunteer, right? There's community centers out there. There are nonprofit organizations that out there that would love to take your service for free, and in return, guess what, you get to put that experience on your resume.
Beautiful. Excellent example. You've taught a lot of students over the years, Bob. Is there one in particular that stands out to you that you think about as a student with the experience of certification and how that helped them?
Well, I had one student a couple of years ago. He's a great individual. He's a cancer survivor. And he was very diligent in class, and he pretty much followed my recipe of going for, say, the CompTIA certifications after taking the relevant classes. And he got his initial offer from a Microsoft contractor was in the high 5, low 6-figure range with bonus potential, and that's coming out of school with an associate's degree. So that's the kind of success story that we have. I mean, your mileage may vary. Not every student's getting that exact offer, obviously, but it just shows you what's possible. Yeah, he didn't do anything fancy on the job search. I mean, he was just, followed my basic recommendation of put one foot before the other one every day of the week and just keep grinding away. And mixing up the classes, the certification study, and then obviously the work experience, you will get recognized.
Thanks for sharing that. So that confirms that methodology that you use of making sure that along with your education, you're getting certifications and not waiting till the end, so that it's part of your career building credentials as you move along. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Loved hearing those stories. So, Bob, our next question is for you. We were talking a few weeks ago. You mentioned 3 things that a student needs to for a successful IT career. Will you share those 3 things and expound on them for us?
Well, I think I just did, right? I mean, so obviously I teach in a college program, so I do believe that college degrees are one important thing. I think, though, the college degree is a more long-term strategy, because like in the previous example I gave you, you can get a decent job offer with while you're still in school or at the associate's degree level. But my experience is that the bachelor's degree and higher is a bit of a screening mechanism, which if you don't have that, you're going to plateau at a certain point. So even when my students are successful in getting their initial job offer, and when just their experience and their certifications are getting them in the door, I do recommend that they continue with their education at least part-time in order to complete at least a bachelor's degree, if not more, because they're going to have more growth potential now. Okay, but again, that's very much the long-term strategy. I do get quite a few students that are referred straight from unemployment office who have been laid off, and certainly under COVID-19, we're seeing a lot of this, right? They've been laid off from something like the hospitality industry, and now they're making a career change into IT. And many of them ask the question, well, I need to start earning money sooner rather than later. So what do I do? And my general recommendation there is, first of all, start your job search right away. Don't wait, because you need to start racking up experience. And if that means help desk or low-level PC tech support, go for it, because you want to start getting those hours counted. Okay, then the next question is, okay, what about classes? Well, again, I recommend take your classes, but if you can get yourself a technical certificate sooner rather than later, that's going to be beneficial. I mean, I've spoken with one employer that would be happy to interview our students with the equivalent of, say, just an A+ and a Network+, and then that student's useful right away, just at that level. And then I would, of course, prefer that student continue and get more education on top of that. But just things like the A+ or the Network+ certification separate you from the pack in terms of applications for some of these entry-level foot in the door type of tech positions. So anyway, that's my general formula. And I would say even advanced students, I mean, we do have another type of student who is someone who's an established IT professional, but they come to us specifically for a technology upgrade in one vertical or another. Again, the usual formula is take the class first. All of our classes map to some industry certification or another. And then after you finish the class, spend another month cramming and then go take that certification exam.
Mm. So it makes it possible with that education to increase there. I love it. Oliver, it sounds like we always imagine when we're sitting outside of it that you go to school and you complete and then you graduate, or you're getting to a point where you have a bachelor's degree and then you go look for a job. But it sounds like what we're hearing, that certifications make it possible for them to get themselves into a career prior to necessarily graduating from school. Has that been your experience as well, Oliver?
Yes, it has. I think, probably one of our biggest challenges in a 2-year college is to keep these students in school once they, what would I call, test out, right? In other words, get their certification, right? And because here, if you think about it, as Bob said, these students, they want to earn dollars now. Well, because you're in a pretty hot field, right? You're gonna earn that money, right? You're probably gonna have to, maybe work a little bit harder if you don't have the experience. But with that certification, you're gonna earn the money. And what I'm seeing is a lot of students, as soon as they say take a Security Plus class, they have a tendency of, getting a job and forgetting about, the rest of their education. And, to Bob's point, what's going to happen is you're going to plateau, right? You're going to get to a point where this is all you're going to qualify for, because, they're looking for someone with a 4-year degree, right, to help lead that organization, right? So that being the case, I try to convince students to the fact that, listen, okay, how I did it, and I have, I even hate to say this, right? But and I'm not trying to brag or anything, right? So I have like about 4+ college degrees, right? And how I did it is that I went to a 2-year college, got my 2-year degree, worked for multiple companies who offered things like tuition reimbursement, right? And so I worked for these companies. I went to school. I continue to go, during the to sort of finish, my degrees, right? And that's one path that I kind of guide these students to take, instead of just getting the cert, getting the job, and pretty much you're going to be stuck, because that's typically what happens.
That's good to understand. So then the opportunity for a job that can support them better than just flipping burgers, for example, at McDonald's while they're going to school, doesn't mean stop because they've got something a little better. There's more potential for them to gain and increase their education and continue to keep themselves learning about the IT industry and opportunities to become more skilled, it sounds like. Thank you, Oliver.
Yes.
Um, uh, you mentioned a little bit earlier about the search engine and how that functions. Did you have a little more insight on, are there key elements or things that are watched nowadays? Because that resume process is different than it used to be.
Yeah, it sure is. As I mentioned earlier, back in the day when, I was looking for jobs, I would, target a company, knock on the door, and hopefully, get fill out an application, and then perhaps the hiring manager will come out and, talk with me, right? Those days are gone. Right. Today, everything, as most everyone on this call knows, is done electronically, right? And what essentially happens is that, you fill out a job application online, and it pretty much sits there until the HR person goes through and pulls out the requirements. Now, you have to keep in mind that the requirements, when I was a hiring manager, I would actually fill out what's called a rec, right? And on the rec, I would say, I want, this type of experience. I would say, I want this type of certification. A plus. I'll give that to the HR person. Now, the back end of the search engines like Monster and all these different search engines that are out there, careerbuilders.com, the back end of it is what the HR person is dealing with. So they have filters that they're going to set. So if when they read my rec, they're going to put those requirements into those filters. And one of the filters is going to say A plus. And as you have, say, a couple of hundred resumes online, when the software starts scanning through and using its filters, it's going to only pull out those applications that have that A plus. And if you don't have it, no matter how good you are, I'm never going to see you, right? Because I don't have time to look through 30, 40 resumes. I just want to look at 5. And the HR person, they are not sure, or they don't really, they're not experts in the type of candidate that I require other than what I wrote for them, right? So they can't look at a resume and say, this is a good person. But what they can do is look at the resume that the engine has stopped and said, hey, this person has this certification, give it to Oliver, let him decide. So this is how today you have to have something on your resume, right? Whether some keywords, but if the hiring manager puts a certification and you don't have it, you could put as many keywords as you want on that application. It's not going to stop those search engines.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's very insightful. I loved how you said that the days of just kind of going door to door and asking to talk to the hiring manager are over. So it really does show you how important it is for these students to get these certifications on their resume. So we're gonna now be privileged to hear from Cody Clark. Cody Clark is the managing editor for Certification Magazine. So Cody, if you could jump on here with us. Hi, Cody. All right. So something about Certification Magazine is every year they do the salary survey. And so Cody, could you just talk to us a little bit about the 2021 salary survey results and kind of how they make a difference in earning potential?
So I just wanted to briefly just recap to reiterate some of the benefits of having a certification. To reiterate some of what Bob and Oliver have already shared, a certification demonstrates to any employer that you've got perseverance and commitment, that you can follow through. Certification is often self-directed, and it's often up to the person getting the certification to make sure that that happens. So that's always a plus side in hiring. It demonstrates that you're committed to professional development and continuous learning. In information technology, it's vital that you continually stay at the front of whatever field you're in. So having certifications on your resume demonstrates that you have that commitment to continuous learning. It shows that you're keeping pace with changes in technology, that you're up to date on the latest things that are part of your field. And it's a baseline qualification for a lot of IT jobs. Oliver mentioned this a little. There are a lot of jobs that you can't even get, you won't even be seen in the hiring process if you don't have a particular certification. And if there are two candidates and everything else between them is equal, generally the one with the certification is more likely to get the interview. So those are points that are valuable to remember when talking about certifications with your students. So we ask everyone who takes the salary survey each year some questions about how certification works in their career, and also, of course, about their salary. One of the things that the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics keeps track of the average weekly income for a computer occupations worker. And the average income per week for a computer occupations worker is $1,696, which comes out to about $88,000 a year. So if we look at the salary survey, and we separate out, so people who take the survey can have anywhere, some of them have 20 or more certifications, some of them have 1 or 2. But we separated out all the people who participated in the salary survey, who are all IT professionals. We have several thousand participate every year. And to participate in the survey, they have to hold at least one current certification. So we just separated out only the people who participated in the survey who have just one certification. And the average weekly income for those people is $2,105, which comes out to about $110,000 a year. So it's not an exact comparison, but it does demonstrate that there is and can be a considerable bump in salary over the average worker in the field if you have even just one certification. We also ask survey participants, so thinking back to your most recently completed certification, did you get a promotion in the first year after attaining that certification? And again, certification is not the only factor in determining that sort of thing, but it is telling that essentially 1/4 of all the people who answered that question did receive a promotion in the first year after getting their most recent certification. We also asked that question as it relates to pay raises. Did you receive a pay raise in the first year after getting your most recent certification? And 40% of participants in the salary survey did get a raise in the first year after getting their most recent certification. Again, certification is not the only thing that affects that, but it is a factor and can definitely play a role. We also ask participants in the survey to respond to questions about how certification affects their work from day to day. And I just wanted to share a few notes about that as well. So we asked them, how often do you use skills that you learned or that you upgraded directly through certification? And so 48%, almost half of all the participants in the survey, said they use their certified skills several times a day. Another 30% said they use their certified skills several times a week, and several times a month for 11% of respondents. There's only about 10% of the people who took the survey who said they only use their certified skills either occasionally or rarely. So there's a lot of value just in what you'll be facing on the job from day to day to having a certification. We asked, do you feel there's greater demand for your skills since becoming certified? Since you earned a certification or more than one, have you been in more demand in your field? 78% either strongly agree that there's greater demand for their skills, that was 37%, or they agree that there's greater demand for their skills, that's 41%. So again, more than 3/4 of the people we talked to have experienced greater demand for their skills since becoming certified. We also asked them, do you feel that becoming certified has increased your ability to solve problems? 70% either strongly agree or agree that becoming certified has increased their ability to solve problems. And finally, we also asked them, do you feel that becoming certified has increased your workplace productivity? Do you get more done as a result of being certified? And again, 70% roughly either strongly agree or agree that they get more done on the job, they're more productive as a result of certification. So certification can certainly have an impact on your ability to earn. You can certainly get promotions and raises as a result of that, but it's also incredibly important to the work that you're doing. Again, you use those skills often several times a day. And there's greater demand for people who have certifications. Certification can help you become a more effective problem solver, and it can help you increase your productivity. Some of this information was compiled into an infographic that we've recently been sharing as part of CTE month. So I'll put the link to that in the chat, and anyone who's interested can go to that page, and about halfway down the page there's a link to download the infographic that has some of this information that I've talked about.
And we'll also share that infographic when we share the recording. We'll make sure we post it to that web page where the recording is as well.
Excellent. That's everything I've got to say. Thanks for letting me participate.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cody. I love to hear that the majority, how in all the skills that you have to get a job, that certification can play a key role in being prepared to do what you need to do to solve the problems you need to have, and to just give you an opportunity to utilize that experience of gaining a certificate to not only get the job in the first place, but help you be more productive to start in the things that you're doing. You're spending less time trying to figure out how to do something and just doing it because of the skills. That's awesome. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. The CERT magazine is something that students can participate in those surveys, any of them that gain a certificate. That's something that instructors could share with them as well, right? To be a part of that annual survey that's conducted.
Yeah, the only gateway question to take the survey is you have to have at least one current certification. So any student, high school or community college or four-year university who had a certification could participate. It's the survey is conducted each year from about August through November. And we just announced it on the website, certmag.com, and it's open to anyone who wants to participate who has that qualification.
Awesome. Thank you. Valuable information for students to see as a motivator and to compare and help them decide maybe which path they want to take, in addition to being part of that information that we can be shared with other students. Thank you. As I'm thinking about what path a student is going to take and choose, I'm wondering, Bob, if you could maybe take this question to just help us understand what those certification pathways are, and how do you help a student explore the different career options that are available to them?
Absolutely, I'll be happy to share that. So part of my roles at North Seattle College is I do a lot of intake advising for students that are interested in IT careers, and many of them really have no background information at all. So the way our pathways line up, there's basically two main choices. You're either going into a programming application development direction, or you're going into a networking system administration direction. Now, with application development, certifications probably are not as critical. It's more about programming languages, portfolios, and ultimately at least a bachelor's degree. However, with networking and system administration, certification is absolutely vital. So we align our curriculum around major certification pathways. We're talking about CompTIA, Microsoft, Cisco, and ultimately Amazon Web Services. So in the system administration world, we're fairly sequential, right? So I would recommend students start with an A+, then go to a Network+. Then on top of that, you look at maybe a Linux certification or a Security Plus certification. Cisco is very good for networking still. And then Microsoft is in flux because they've recently moved all their certifications away from the Windows Server product line to Azure. And so that's something we're still trying to figure out. But I think Microsoft's modeling their certs after Amazon Web Services. And I recently got AWS certified. And I wanted to add to what Oliver said before. First of all, I second the emotion that everything is automated nowadays on screening. What I do want to add is don't neglect LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is the most active IT recruiting market, period. And it's super automated. And as soon as a keyword pops on LinkedIn, you get the looks. I mean, last year I completed entry-level AWS certification. I got like 20 attaboys the minute that thing hit LinkedIn. Okay, and I've had students that have been recruited and hired not because they were in a job search, but because the recruiters found them on LinkedIn. So the more you decorate that profile, the quicker you're going to get the results. So anyway, the best thing going is certification. And again, my top end now is Amazon Web Services. But what I'm finding is that all of the TestOut products and the allied certifications, so the CompTIA certs, the Linux Plus, and things like that, those are all amazingly great prerequisite skills because AWS assumes you know all that stuff before you start taking the cloud certification. So, you know, everything's moving to the cloud nowadays, that's for sure. But what I find is that those of us that did the old school physical sysadmin for years with actual metal boxes in a room where we could touch them have a leg up on the people that have never had those experiences. So I really recommend, again, for students a balanced diet of, you know, take it one step at a time. If you don't have any IT experience, start with an A+ and get those certs on your resume. Then, like Oliver said, go volunteer for somebody, get a part-time job, you know, do anything you can to start counting the experience, and that'll elevate you quicker than anything.
Yeah, Bob, to your point there, and you're right. Once you obtain a certification and you put it on LinkedIn, you're going to get so many looks. In fact, I made the mistake of putting my certs up there, and I get these applications. But it's good in a sense because what I do is that I share that with my class. I say, well, here's a job rec, right? And look what they're looking for, highlighted. Usually a A+ or something along that line, some sort of a security type certification. And I'm glad, Justin, you put this chart up here because, if you look at this particular chart, there's a lot of certifications out there. And I often get this from students, where do I start? Oh yeah, I want to get a CISSP. Well, no, you maybe that's the cert you want to obtain to, but there's a lot of requirements in getting that type of cert, right? A lot of personal experience you have to have. But if you start looking at the bottom, right, take a look at, for example, where that A+ is, where the security plus is, right? Those are entry-level type certs that you can get, right? And from there, you could decide, well, okay, I want to, focus my attention on perhaps security analyst role, right? Assuming you know what that is, right? And once you have that targeted, then you can start moving up this chain, right? But there are some, to Bob's point, some baseline certifications that you need to enter the market, and that is your A+, that is your security plus, and wherever you go with your certs, those are the foundational certs you could get. And also, just quickly, one more point I want to make is that we have a lot of adult learners in our programs, or people that are changing careers. And the nice thing that I found about the TestOut, you could run it on just about a tablet, a laptop, at your convenience, during your time. Now, certainly, we have a structured program where these students will have to take X amount of exams, and what we try to do like, for example, I teach the A+, there's 13 exams that you're going to take, right? But for the most part, it's flexible, right? You could get in there, you could work the software. And I tell students, you need to get, when you're doing your labs within the test out, if you don't get 100, redo it. Keep doing it and doing it. And believe it or not, when students do these things over and over, it really prepares them for that industry recognizable certification at the end.
Great, thank you. That was very insightful. So to this point, we've kind of talked about, the South. We know that students need certifications. We know they're going to help getting a job, and that there are also many pathways a person can choose in their career. So, Oliver, you briefly mentioned a minute ago about the TestOut certification. Can you talk about kind of how you use your 15-week semester to prepare students to get certified?
Right. So, I don't. Some of you probably realize it, but back in the day, you'd have your computer say it was busted, and your next door neighbor will come over and he'll fix it, right? And then he'll fix everyone's computer, right? But he didn't really. If he or she went to get a job, they didn't really have that skill set to say, well, this is what I've been doing, or the employee didn't have confident enough in them to say, yeah, let's give them a shot. If they had their A plus, they'll put them above the fray, so to speak, right? So in my classes, and I teach the A plus, I teach the Security Plus, the Linux Pro, routing and switching, and a couple more classes in there as well. But one of the things that I do, say exactly in the A plus class, you're going to be tested at the end of every module, right? And that test, we don't, the passing grade in my class for those tests is an 80, right? You need to get 80% of it, right? And if I see a student is, if they take 3 tests and they're below 80, they're not putting in the time, right? But the reason I say you have to get 80 is by the time you take all 13 tests, if you're averaging 85 and above or 80 and above, you're in good position to take the CompTIA test. Now, we all know that these certifications is not free, right? So there's a cost associated with taking, the core 1, core 2 of that CompTIA test, and it could be quite expensive. So you want to be prepared and make sure you're able to pass that test at the first sitting. So once the students takes 13 of my tests and then take the test out final, right? If they get above 85 on it, they're ready to sit for the CompTIA, because that test out test is a little bit more difficult, right, than the actual test. And so I can gauge whether or not a student is prepared. And I tell them, look, if you don't, if you get an 80 on the final, it's not that you're going to fail the class. All it really means is you need more preparation, right? And because TestOut allows you, I think about a year on, once you purchase the course, you could go back and, redo those labs, redo that study and, things along that line, and read some supplemental type material to prep for the test, because you want to be able to pass that test on the first sitting. And I think the TestOut tool prepares the students to do just that.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate that sharing what some of the differences are. I think this is a great time for us, Justin, maybe to have Dana join us and tell us a little more about the TestOut certification exams and our services, and how they support the CompTIA and other industry exams, and what's a little bit different about them. Just by way of introduction, Dana, I'd like people to just know that he's taught IT classes for many years at the high school and college level both. And he is now a TestOut employee for us. We've enjoyed having him for several years. And with his experience as an educator and also as an employee, he's got a wonderful, unique position to explain about TestOut Pro certifications and how they fit into the big picture. And so if you could just take a few minutes, Dana, and explain to us the whys behind our mythology and how it's effective, that would be great.
Yeah, so let me just jump into, if you can go ahead and make me presenter, I'll go ahead and I'll kind of show you what the what the lab sim certifications look like, and how which the lab sim certification, the TestOut Pro certifications are performance based. But it's not just, let me I didn't see this pop up.
I made you the presenter, so you should be able to share.
Okay. Do you see the PowerPoint screen?
We do.
Okay, let me make that. All right. So a CompTIA exam is a multiple choice, and the TestOut Pro certifications are performance based. But it's not just like go here and enter an IP address. So if you look at one of the scenarios here, this is something that you might see on the LabSim Pro certification exam. It says, I won't read the whole thing, but the part here, it says use the last valid address on the subnet, and it gives you the subnet address. So in your mind, it's not really a multiple choice, it's a fill in the blank. You have to know what you're looking at. And it's not multiple guess. You don't get 25% chance for guessing. You have to know what that is. Over to the right, the Ethernet 2 it's the same type of question, the last valid address on a subnet. So if you don't know subnetting, you don't know IP addressing, you're not going to get this. So by doing this whole certification, this is like one example of maybe 10 to 15 scenarios you might get on a cert exam. And you have to know about 4 or 5 different things. You're getting like 4 or 5 multiple choice questions kind of out of this one scenario. So, well, I'll finish this up. So the answer to that would be the IP address for this part. This would be the IP address for this part. But also in this example, you need to know like DNS routing. So it's like 10 questions into one. Now, when you go to the if you took the CompTIA, this is from like the Network Plus exam. So this is an example question you might see on the multiple choice when you take I got a little bit of a pneumonia going on, so forgive me for my voice, losing my voice a little bit. So this is the type of question you might see on the CompTIA certification if you went and took it. It says, you're the network administrator, you put a new router in or whatever, what's the last valid IP address with this subnet? And here's the answer. So you're getting like one answer, one question, one answer. And it'd be easy. A lot of teachers have heard of brain dumps and stuff. Students will go to brain dumps, basically download the questions and answers for CompTIA or Microsoft or Cisco Cert, memorize the questions and answers, go take the exam and pass, and they're certified. Do they really know what they're doing, or do they just memorize, a couple hundred questions and answers? And that's the thing I always stress to my students. It's not like if you pass the exam, it's do you really know what you're doing? So that's the cool thing about the LabSim Pro exams is that you have to know not only how to get the answer, but where to put the answer and configure things, actually do something. So here's another example. This one is a troubleshooting one. This one here is quite difficult. It's giving you some tools you got to use. You got to use ping, IP config, and trace route. And the scenario says you're having trouble communicating. Some computers communicate, some don't. Something changed. And you go into troubleshoot, and you got to fix the problem on the workstation or the DHCP. So this is really causing some students to really think troubleshooting. Can they think outside the box? Not a multiple guess, multiple answer. Nothing, nothing wrong with multiple choice questions, but it makes you think a little bit better. So if we jump ahead, okay. So once you do the sim and you get the answer to this particular one was some people can communicate and get out to the internet, others can't. And during all this troubleshooting, what you found out was that the default gateway was configurable. And so you actually fix the default gateway, then it works and your user is happy. So an example of a question that you might see on the Network Plus certification exam, it says, technician receives a call. Some people can connect, other people can't connect. Which of the following is most? If you've taken any CompTIA exams lately, you'll see that they like using all caps to shout at you, what's most or first or last. And so the answer to that one is the incorrect default gateway. Once again, it would be easy for me to read this question, read the answer, and not really know like how you determine that, to answer this question, you probably would have had to do all this troubleshooting to figure out, how you get to that solution. So that's what is really, I think, makes the Lab Sim Pro certifications really helpful. And when I taught, if the students passed the Lab Sim certs and did well, that was a good barometer that they could go take the CompTIA. If you can answer this question here, you're going to be able to answer this question quite easily. And a lot of professionals I talk to, they say, oh, the Lab Sim exam or Pro Cert exam isn't recognized as much as the CompTIA. CompTIA is this, CompTIA is that. Well, CompTIA has a big, stranglehold on the industry. They're, been around for a long time. But I would tell the local IT people where I taught back in Illinois, I'm getting to this story in a minute, this is my story time. If a student walks in, they have Lab Sim Pro certs on their resume, I want them to know that what the students know. Now, how do you get that information to those people? And you can make yourself presenter again, Justin. I'll tell my story time.
And
All right.
Dana, we do have 6 minutes left, so.
Okay, I'll give you the 4-minute version. So,
all
right, before I worked at TestOut, I was a teacher. And one of the first things I was told as a teacher, like in 2007, was you got to have an advisory committee. So I started looking for an advisory committee. I found out there was an IT professional group that met quarterly. So I go, okay, I'll go ask some of those people. I went there and I asked those people, who wants to be on my advisory committee? Nobody raised their hand. Finally, one of my friends who's on that team says, why don't you just piggyback and use us as your advisory committee? That way we don't have to make any commitments. You can come to these meetings. I said, great. So over the years, I would talk about TestOut and the Lab Sim Pro, and then I was disappointed that some of these places, like our local hospital, wouldn't hire my students, even if they had an associate's degree. They wanted a bachelor's degree. They go, well, we don't know if they know what they're doing. I said, I need to educate these IT professionals of what we learn in our classes and what my students are capable of. So I said, why don't we have one of this next meeting, come to our school and I'll kind of show you my classroom, our lab and everything. And then the idea was, why to have students also demonstrate the Lab Sim product and what they learn. So that happened. They showed up, and I had the students actually sit over in the corner of the classroom. I had a pretty big classroom, had like 25, 30 IT people in there. And the students would like show them some of the simulations and what they were learning, how they matched with CompTIA exams and everything. And the IT people in that room, like their eyeballs just popped open. And I actually challenged some of the people, say, hey, you guys want to go up here and configure this DHCP relay agent or something? And they're like, we don't want to do that. And then I'd have a student pop up in the simulation, configure, DHCP relay, and they were pretty impressed. So the point of that was, then I explained what the Lab Sim Pro certification was. And my point is to educate my local IT people. There's like 90 people part of this group and a 50-mile radius. I wanted them to know that when one of the students from either our local college, I taught adjunct at college, then at a career center for high school. When those students applied and they had on their resume, I'm PC Pro certified, Network Pro certified, Security Pro, Linux Pro, I wanted them to know that not only did they just not take a multiple guess and multiple choice question, get a cert, and possibly download the brain up and cheat it, they had to like troubleshoot and configure and figure all these answers out. And that it was like probably equivalent to like 100 multiple choice questions they had to do to get that cert. So that's, and then actually at the end of this, I think some of our local IT people knew that, like, wow, this is like, when they see the labs and they know what that student did to get that. And then if they had A+ and stuff, that was also good too. But it was a great place for students to start getting that snowball momentum of getting certs. You start with the Lab Sim. You can move to CompTIA. Those aren't cheap. Cisco and the Microsoft, and just keep building a big old, just stack those certs and really help you get your foot in the door somewhere. That was the 4-minute version. I did have a 10-minute version, so.
Well, thank you. That was a great story. It's great to hear just how it all fits together. And I loved what you said about you know, the industry cert is great. It definitely has its place, but our TestOut certification, it shows that students can do it. It really shows that they have the skills. And so I really appreciate all of you joining us today. It looks like we're out of time, so there have been a ton of really great questions. So what we're going to do is we will make sure we answer all of those, and we'll send them out in the email with the webinar recording. So make sure that you look for that email in the next day or so. Once we get all these questions answered for you, we'll email them out because we are at the end of time. And Dave was going to pick our winners for us. Did you get those for us, Dave? I want to make sure we give out those two Raspberry Pis today.
While he's checking on that, just looking at a couple of those questions, one of them that was shared was that some complaints about the CERT exams are that they can be passed with generous amounts of memorization. Do you believe that CERT exams have improved over time with the addition of practical problem-solving questions that require more memory? I think Dana touched on that just a little bit as far as the difference. I know that CompTIA is working on improving their questions as well, but is there still a divide? I mean, the way they're phrased and the terminology that's used might be different, but are we seeing CompTIA or other industry exams adopt more questions that are more skill-based?
You asking me? I can kind of answer that. A lot of the certs are starting to do like snippets of, like, if it's like a cybersecurity, it'd be a snip of like an Nmap scan, and then the questions based on what you're looking at. So they are getting better. But it's still multiple choice where a student can, like, possibly get those questions off some blog or brain dump and memorize the answers. So CompTIA does have, like, the beginning of all their exams is like 3 simulated type questions at the beginning, but it's only probably like 15% of the total exam. So they're getting there, but I think they still have a long ways to go.
Okay. Thanks.
I think what we're going to see in the future when it comes to just about all of these certs is more of an adaptive type tested methodology where you answer the first questions correctly. They just get harder and harder to make sure that you really know this stuff, right, instead of brute memorization. So I think we're going to see more adaptive type tested for these certifications in the future.
Definitely. Okay.
Excellent. So it looks like we do have our winners here. First one is Heidi Eaton from Elgin Community College. You were one of the winners of our Raspberry Pi today, so congratulations. We'll get with you.
An Illinois person, yay.
Okay, and then the next person is, and I apologize if I mispronounce her name, Arana Fireheart from SNHU. So you're the next winner of our Raspberry Pi. So congratulations. And then we will look through all the attendees and figure out which of you has administered the most pro certification exams, and we'll get you your Raspberry Pi as well and let you know. So thank you, Bob. Thank you, Dana, Oliver, and Cody for joining us and for helping us. Thank you, all of you who were on the webinar. Great questions. We'll make sure we get the answers to those, either on the FAQ question or on the landing page with the recording, but we'll definitely get you those answers. So thank you all for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
And you'll know you'll have Bob Bunge and Oliver Miller and Dana Fellows available there to answer some of those questions directly, so that you've got other instructors, that peers that can assist with answering those better than TestOut can. And if you have any questions about the process of scheduling certification exams or including them in your school specifically, to reach out to us, and we'll make sure that you're connected to someone who can help you with that.
Great. And there will be a survey, just a brief survey at the end. Once I end this, please take a few minutes to answer those questions. It does help us with these webinars and make sure we're getting you the content that you need. So thank you.
Thank you so much.